For today's video, I thought we would have a go at making the Marlow Sweater by True Bias. Now, if you haven't heard of this pattern, I am shocked because it is absolutely everywhere. It is the perfect grandad cardigan. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. Hi guys, welcome to my channel Sewing Stash. My name's Jodie and today's video is going to be all about making the Marlow Sweater. Now, if you haven't seen, this is the Marlow Sweater by True Bias and it's like a oversized grandad cardigan. So the fabric we're going to be making that in is actually, I've got the same fabric on, how weird is that? Is the same fabric that I'm actually wearing, but in a different colour. So this is like a dusky pink. And what I didn't realise when I brought this pattern was that it comes in two cup sizes. It comes in a C cup and a D cup. Now, if you don't know about sewing cup sizes, they're different to your bra sizes. So most standard patterns are made for a B cup in the sewing world, which means that you have a 2-inch difference between your high bust and your apex. Now, I have a 3-inch difference. So my high bust is a 43-inch and my apex, the fullest part of my bust, is 46. So I usually use a C cup. If sewing patterns do cup sizes, I'd go for a C cup. Now, I didn't know this when I purchased and downloaded this pattern, and I just assumed that I would come into the larger sizes because of my bust. So I bought the larger size range of the pattern, and it actually transpires that the larger size range of the pattern is a D cup and the smaller size version of the pattern is a C cup. I mean, I don't think it's going to make that much difference. It just means that I'm going to go down a size in the smaller pattern. But other than that, I'm quite looking forward to putting it together. Other than the fact it is like 60 pages of PDF to put together, so I'm not quite looking forward to that. Also, I've noticed as well when I printed off this pattern is it's cut off a little bit of the margin. So I'm about 1 millimetre to 2 millimetres short. So that means I'm going to have to make sure that I add that on to all the parts of my pattern, which is a little bit annoying, but I think that might have been my printing error. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, let me know if you guys have downloaded this PDF and have had the same issue. But without further ado, we'll get straight into it. In case I didn't tell you, I really hate putting together PDF patterns. I'm only on stage 9 and I've been here for an hour.
10 years later.
Welcome to my kitchen floor. If you ever wondered what 60 pieces of PDF pattern look like all stuck together, here it is. This took me a lot longer than it should have. Admittedly, I had a few distractions. No kisses. Does not help me with... You're not helping. No, stop it. Stop it. But I can already tell that I'm gonna have some issues because when I was trying to put this together, I had to unstick and restick pieces. They don't 100% line up despite my best efforts. I do have the issue of the printer missing like 1 millimetre off of the pattern, so I was trying to incorporate that also. And I have this weird bubble by number 36 that doesn't sit flat, but the rest of it does. So I'm gonna have to go in and straighten that up. If you guys ever wondered how you unstick the sellotape from a PDF pattern that you've just put down without tearing up your pattern, I've got a little trick for you. So what you do is you pull up the edge and you snip the tiny bit of tape and then you just pull, and then that way it comes off really easily. So for the sizing of this pattern, what I tend to do is look for my high bust measurement, which is here, a 43.5, and that's so that it fits me well across the top of my bust and the shoulders. And then I come down to the finish measurements, and that tells me whether I'll need to do a full bust adjustment or not. So on the finish measurements, it will fit me across the chest at 50.5, which is more than enough room, as mine is 46 across. So that will give me a good 5.5 inches of ease, which will be plenty. So that's how I go around choosing my sizes. Now I have all my pattern pieces cut out, I wanted to let you know something that I discovered. So I've cut out the neckband here for the 20 to 40% stretch, because that's how much stretch my fabric has. But there is also a neckband for the same pattern, size version B, but is a 40 or more % stretch. So this band is actually smaller. So you need to know how much stretch is in your fabric. I mean, thankfully, True Bias have actually provided a stretch gauge in with their pattern instructions, so that you can actually work out how much stretch your fabric has, so then you'll know which band you want to cut out. So if you don't know how to do this, let me try and show you. I think you can see. So what you do is you get your fabric and you line it up with the gauge without stretching it. So there we go. So I'll put my finger on the end here, and then you pull your fabric and it will tell you how much stretch you have. So my fabric actually has up to 40% stretch, and it won't stretch any further than that. So I know that I need the neckband for the 20 to 40% stretch. This is also the same for that's the neckband. I think it's also the same for the bottom band, if I believe correctly. I can't find it amongst all this at the moment. But that's also the same for another of the bands, which I'm assuming would be the bottom band to the sweater. So I just thought I'd let you know about that. So now all the pattern pieces are cut out, it's time to lay the fabric out. One of the things I didn't mention was you will need interfacing. So if you've seen any of my videos before, you've seen that I've used this interfacing before. This is a iron-on interfacing. I got this from Minerva Crafts. I've got a couple of meters, and I've also got some buttons, and I've got these buttons that are going to be for the button-up part of the sweater. So I think that will go quite nicely. I think that works quite well. So next step now is to lay out the fabric, making sure that I pay attention to the direction of my pattern on my fabric, and start cutting out. So one of the things I'm actually having to do differently due to my pattern of my fabric is cut this strip, which is the neckband, which is this part here. I'm actually having to cut that up my fabric rather than across, and the reason being is because of my embossed fabric. If I was to cut this across and then join, because you join them together at this part to make your neckband, what's going to happen is where the rest of my embossed pattern is coming down, that pattern's going to go across, and that's going to really bug me. So I'm actually going to cut this straight up the fabric, so that although on the back of the collar it's going to be going the wrong way, it will be coming straight down this way, and I think I can live with that better than if it was going across that way and straight up a little back that you see. So this is what I'm going to have to live with. but I would much rather it that the majority follows the front, especially when that's what you're going to see. So anyone else love the sound of what a sharp pair of scissors sounds like cutting through fabric? I brought these scissors from Amazon for £12 and oh my gosh, they sound amazing. So the pattern pieces are all cut out. We have our sleeve, our front bodice, our back bodice, our neckband. We've got our wristbands, our pockets and our waistband. Also got some interfacing for the pocket top and the interfacing for the button placket. You will be left with this piece here. And you don't need to worry about that because that's not for cutting out of anything. This is just your buttonhole placement. So now we've got all that, the instructions tell me that we need to obviously make sure we've got all our pattern pieces together, and then we need to start working on the waistband, ironing some interfacing, and then working on the pockets. So we're going to start with that. Just in case anyone's confused about why the instructions are asking you to stitch the pocket down with the right sides together, don't panic, because what's going to happen is these corner seams here are going to get cut off and then it's going to get turned right way out, so it makes a nice pointy corner. So just in case you were like me and you looked at it and thought, what the hell's going on here? It's just occurred to me that obviously these are going to turn the right way out and it keeps it all nice and neat. The pockets are now pinned in place, so I'm going to go along and top stitch these down. I did have to move it across slightly because I hadn't correctly pattern matched the pockets to the top. I also noticed in my excitement to cut this fabric out that I never really paid proper attention to the pattern matching on the bodice. So you can see here, this is way over here, but this one's right on the edge. It is what it is, never mind, but it is annoying me a little bit. I don't have enough fabric now to cut this out again, but hey ho, here we are, you live you learn. I didn't think about pattern matching, to be fair. I have no idea why I didn't, but here we are. So I have tried my best to pattern match the pockets to try and make it look more balanced. I don't think it's going to be that noticeable, if I'm honest. I think it's just me that notices it more than anyone else. But we're going to sew these down and then I believe we are attaching the front bodice to the back bodice. So now the pocket's on, it's time to attach the front bodice to the back bodice at the shoulder seams. So I've pinned them there. Then after that, we're doing the sleeves before we sew up the side seams. So I'm gonna quickly stitch across the top here. I'm gonna choose not to stabilize the shoulders. I think this is structured enough that I won't need to. So I'm not going to do that, but if you have really stretchy fabric, the pattern definitely suggests to stabilise your shoulders using some clear elastic. So I'm going to go sew up the shoulder seams and then we can start attaching the sleeve. Now we've got the shoulder seams sewn up, it's time to work on the sleeve. And True Bias have done my favourite way of putting in the sleeve, which is to leave the side seams open. It makes it a lot easier to ease the sleeve in, and then you can sew up the sleeve and the side seam all in one go. So this is what we're working on now. I'm just about to set these in and then we'll stitch around it. Then it's just stitching up the armhole and the side seam, and then it's actually going to start looking like a cardigan. So I'm really excited. Sleeves are in, and I have to say these were the easiest sleeves I have ever done in my life. There was no issues, no puckers, no redos. They were just absolutely perfect. So I've already stitched up the side seams, and the next thing to do is going to be the waistband and the neckband. So we're going to go and do that now. So now it's time to attach the band to the bottom of the cardigan, and we need to match the single notch to the side seam. So I'm going to make sure that the seam allowance is pressed towards the back, and then line that up with the line of the seam allowance. And we do need to make it stretch to fit, but not an awful lot. So we come across here, we can see that the waistband doesn't quite match up. So what we're going to do is pull it across slightly, pin it in place, and then just ease in the waistband. So you don't have to guesstimate how much you have to stretch this. It does make it quite simple. So we're going to go along and do that for the whole waistband, and then we're going to sew it down, and then I'm going to overlock the edges to keep it nice and neat, and then we can start with the neckband. Now the waistband is attached to the cardigan, what we have to do is work with the neckband. So this is our neckband, and it's got the interface in there. What we have to do is turn it right sides together, stitch 3/8 of an inch along the bottom, and then it will flip out and make a nice tight corner like it did with the pockets. So I'm going to go do that, and then we have to attach this band to the cardigan. The neckband is now attached. I'm really annoyed that I didn't pay enough attention when cutting this, because I thought these would sit nice and center, but I've also got the other part of the pattern here. It's not a massive deal, but it's going to bother me a little bit. So now I'm going to serge all these raw edges to keep them nice and neat, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to top stitch all along the neckline and also the waistband, keep that nice and flat. Then it is just the buttons, buttonholes, and the cuffs, and then we're done. This has actually been a really quick sew. The top stitching is now all done. which really helps and I think looks rather neat. So the instructions say to do the buttons and buttonholes and then the sleeve cuffs. I'm going to do the sleeve cuffs first because that just makes more sense to me. It's what I'm used to. So I'm going to put the sleeve cuffs in the same way that I've done the bottom band and the neckband. And then it's buttons and buttonholes, and this job is a good one. Just in case anyone is unsure about how you put the cuffs together, what you do is you right sides together, match the short ends, then we're going to sew down this end, and then that's going to flip out and come down on itself, so it's going to be about that wide. So that's what we're going to do now. Then we're going to attach those to the cuffs and get started on the button and buttonholes. I'm not actually going to serge these raw edges because they're going to come in on one another, and I don't want the extra bulk, because if they're joined together like that, it's going to cause quite a lot of bulk in the seam. This is not going to fray anyway, so what I'm going to do is just finger press the seam open, and then I'm going to turn it in on itself, matching up those bits. I'm going to straighten it out, and there you have your cuff. Now we have our cuffs prepared, we need to attach them to our bottom of our sleeve. So what you need to do is put the cuff on essentially upside down, matching this seam with the inside seam of the sleeve. So with the non-raw edge, so this is your raw edge and that's your non-raw edge, we are going to just pop this inside, if you can see that. And then what we're going to do, and it's a bit fiddly, let me move you closer, it's a bit fiddly, but what we need to do is find the seam of our sleeve with the seam of our cuff and line those up. And then we need to try and put a pin through all of this fabric, if you can see that. So I'm going to try my best to put a pin just about through it all. And then we need to stretch this out and get all of this sleeve into this cuff. Now this is really fiddly and you need to persevere, but you will get it in there. So I'm going to go and do that, and then I'm going to do it for the other one, and then I'm going to stitch it down. So I've attached the cuffs to the cardigan, and then I've top stitched around the top, and then I've just noticed this. I no longer have enough thread to do the buttonholes. I thought I brought another spool of this, but I haven't. So what I'm going to do is use the bobbin thread and put it up here, and then I'm going to put some white thread in there for the buttonholes, and then it's buttons and buttonholes, and then we're all done. Now it's time to work on the buttonhole and button placket. So I've got my guide out that Tree Bias do for you, and I'm lining up right at the bottom so I know where my buttonholes need to be spaced. One thing I will say that's really interesting about how True Bias do it is that they have their buttonhole and then they have where your button will actually sit. This is really good because usually what you get is a buttonhole and then a circle that goes around the buttonhole, which isn't accurate when you try and follow the gauge to do your buttons. And the reason being is because you stitch your button in the middle, so your button actually slides up your buttonhole because it needs that room to get in. So your button placement tends to be different from where your buttonholes actually are, and True Bias appear to have actually taken this into account. So where my buttonhole is here, they're telling me this is actually where my button's going to sit. So I wouldn't usually follow the guide for the actual buttons themselves, but I'm really tempted to give it a go to just see if this works because it makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice the paper, mark my buttonhole. I just tend to mark the bottom line so I can line it up with my buttonhole foot, and it will go above or below that depending on the size of my button. And then I am really tempted to kind of like put 4 dots in this circle and put one button on and then see if it matches up without any puckering of the fabric, because what I usually do is just do the buttonhole, mark the middle of the buttonhole, and sew my button on the other side where that hole is. But I'm going to try the true bias way because this makes sense to me. So here it is. This is the final product. Oh, hey Poochie. You're really lucky. She hates coming on camera. So this is what I made. This was an absolute dream to make up. There was no problems with it whatsoever, even though the PDF pattern was off slightly. It was absolutely amazing. I do wish that I'd actually gone for the smaller size. I've got a little bit of extra room here that I don't particularly want, but I do tumble dry my clothes quite a bit, so I think that this will shrink anyway. I'm really annoyed about my pattern matching, but that's on me. However, this came together so quickly and it is really cozy, and I can 100% see me wearing it all of the time. It's not all that much figure flattering on me in this size, but I think if I'd actually got the C cup and maybe took it in a little bit, it would just suit my body shape a little bit better. But I 100% love this cardigan. Let me know if you guys have made this cardigan as well, and send me some pictures on my Instagram, which is Sewing Stash. I'll leave the link in the description, and I'll see you next time. Bye.